all three of the times that I was trafficked, I loved the person that did that to me. They told me I was going to a club. I was forced to go into a limo, and they took me to a sex party. And I didn't know that that's what it was. And I walked into a house of dozens of people, and they had a ring of women, and they were switching out and throwing the money. And then I was walked outside, and that's where they were auctioning young girls off. I'm not rare. I am a representative of so many, and their stories are worse because they don't get out.
Misti Spencer researches human trafficking with the University of Central Florida. She spent the last 3 years working in the field, trying to stop it before it starts. She also survived it. Her memoir took 5 years to write.
I become unemployable, essentially, when everybody reads everything that's in my book. I knew that. That's why it took me 5 years to decide.
Welcome, Misti. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Your memoir is called Drinking Beauty and Seven Narcissists, a musical journey.
Yes. I know it's a lot of words, but it means something.
Yeah. Instead of me just kind of going through and asking a bunch of questions, why don't you start off by just telling me about the memoir and like what it's about, what you kind of hope people take away from it, and what caused you to write it in the first place?
Sure. So I am a survivor of human trafficking, child exploitation, domestic violence, amongst other things. And I held all that in for decades. It started in my childhood, and I had multiple instances of this happening in my life. When I got older and I had all of this trauma to process, I struggled with complex PTSD and a bunch of other the things they diagnose you with. And I had to manage that in a normal world where everybody just moves on and keeps living. I was still struggling inside. And I also learned that I'm just a statistic. I wasn't really present in the human trafficking sector. I didn't work in it too much. And once I started working in it about 3.5 years ago, I realized just how much this was going on in our world today. And it bothered me to my core. Because I really did. As a survivor, I thought I was on my own island. And I listened to other survivor stories that blow mine out of the water. And it touched me so much that that's the mission. Why else go through so much in one lifetime? And I have a lot of stories. I was trafficked 3 times at 3 different times in my life, and by 3 different people. And so I wanted to explore, how does this happen? Not just tell people what happened to me. I can tell anybody what happened to me, and you'll cry and it'll be sad and we'll move on. But how did this happen? How did I get to those spaces throughout my life without blaming everybody in my life? That was also a key component of Drinking Beauty. And so I took the time. It took me 5 years in total to write her and get to a point in my life that I was ready to tell people. Because it's a lot. It's a lot to
Yeah.
tell everyone what I went through. But the main goal is that I can stand out for other survivors that struggle to degrees that I don't even understand, and talk out, educate, advocate, and bring awareness to it so that we can do more prevention and less rescuing.
Well, let me ask you, Missy, and we can talk as much or as little about this as you want, but can you kind of give just a little bit of an insight on the background, like so any of us that are watching this, period, but especially those of us that have daughters and things like that, that is something that is scary. We think about and
Yeah.
everything that's going on in the news. So you were talking about how did it happen? Like so as far as prevention and things like that. First of all, like what were kind of some of the circumstances behind it, if you feel comfortable talking about it? And then what are some of the things that people can do to, to potentially avoid it?
I have other stories, but it's a tell-all for those stories. I am telling everything. I want everyone to know how this happened, and without shame, so that other young girls or young men, adults especially, that go through this, they have a way to articulate it themselves. So you can ask me anything you want. I'm an open book, and my book is open. But with that, one of the key things that I express is that all 3 of the times that I was trafficked, I loved the person that did that to me. And when they came into my life, I say they seep into the crevices. It's literally what it feels like. And I grew up in poverty. I low income, lacked resources, bigger city, and I was obviously not a kid that was taken care of all the time. I was alone a lot and running the streets. It was the 70s, mid 70s, mid 80s. Parents were working. This is a symptom of that time. I'm not blaming anyone. It's what people had to do. I get it. But we know better now, and we can change some of the dialogue that we have with our children. I didn't know what was happening to me. I thought these were people who cared for me. When I was an adolescent was the first time, between 12 and 14, and it was somebody that my family trusted, that we didn't look at as somebody that would abuse me, and it didn't happen right away. It's slow. It's little incidents over time that make you trust and build that loyalty. And they don't abuse everyone. They're
Right.
not abusing all the children. They're not abusing all the siblings. Does that happen? Absolutely it does. But there's usually the one target that's the gateway into the others. And they look for the vulnerabilities in the child or the adult, whether it be money, resources, food, all of those things. And they look for what's important.
I would say that's one thing I wanted to point out about that. That is in I don't know if interesting is the right word, but, a lot of times when people think of trafficking, they think of, movies like Taken,
Yeah.
or something like that. You don't think about somebody that you already know and you already trust, and especially, somebody that's tied to the family, and that's I think that's way worse. I'm surprised they don't do movies on that, because to me, that would be way more, dramatic and crazy than somebody that's just scoops you up, in a white van.
It's the hardest to understand because the love is so deep. It almost feels and looks like you are wanting to participate in what's happening. Even as a young child, they make us complicit in it. It starts with little lies. You're going one place. Your parents aren't going to let you do that. Let's go ahead and go over here and do this. And it's fun. They're your peer. I know for me, it made me feel comfortable. I felt more comfortable with them than with my own parents. So there's a type of alienation that comes in. And I don't blame my parents because it's not obvious. They're not detectable that way. And the child will tell you that they love them almost every time. It's a sincere admiration and adoration that works into that relationship. Now, fast forward, because I had a big gap in years. I wasn't abused again in that way. I was abused throughout my life. There's other stories. But as far as trafficking specifically, I was 22 when that happened to me the next time. And it was another group of people that saw my vulnerabilities. I lacked resources again. I was in a space I didn't know anybody. And they brought me into a lifestyle where it's a lot of fun. I was introduced to the lifestyle when I was about 21, and I knew about it in my late teens, but it's the sex clubs, the strip clubs, the swingers.
Wow, would have never considered that.
Yeah, and I was that girl that they could bring in and make a girlfriend, basically. They seduced me with money and gifts and all the things that I didn't have in my life or couldn't provide for myself. And they also told me they could help me have a better life. So it was all under the premise of me having better work, better positioning in life. I could get myself out of the turmoil that I was in. And then they keep elevating your commitment to that relationship and pressing your boundaries. What are you willing to do next for them? And who are you willing to be with them? It becomes a whole systematic circuit that you belong to. And fortunately for me, and I say this often, once I was trafficked by them, they told me I was going to a club. Reader's Digest told me I was going to a club, and we didn't. I was forced to go into a limo before cell phones, before Uber, before pagers, and they took me to a sex party. And I didn't know that that's what it was. And I walked into a house of dozens of people, all engaging in stuff, and it looked like a club with lights and music, and they had a ring of women and they were switching out and throwing the money. And then I was walked outside, and that's where they were auctioning young girls
Wow.
off. And I was older than them. They were very young. Some of them did not look legal. And then I was told what was expected of me. And I fought back verbally as much as I could, but in that moment, they hold all the cards. I had no idea where I was. And so I was pressured and blackmailed. They already had videos and pictures of me from previous things that I had gotten wrapped up in. So they had a lot of leverage. And at this event, I pretended that I would go along just so that I could get out of what was happening. The pressure, they were giving me more drugs and trying to get me basically blacked out, more alcohol, and I would pour it out. I started hiding, saying I was excusing myself for a reason or another. And I hid in the bathroom and hallways or wherever. And I ended up hiding in the kitchen under like an island with another person who didn't want to be auctioned. And when they found me, I got in trouble. They took me home and I never saw them again.
Hmm.
I,
The
yeah,
traffickers took you home?
they did. Yeah. After the party, I mean, we're friends. That's the confusing part. It's you didn't fulfill your duty in this. Everything that didn't happen was my fault. And they use a whole lot of tactics and words that say, you owe this to me. Come on, this is no big deal. We've had fun before. You're going to have a great time. It's all of that coaxing and bullying and pressuring that happens in those moments. And I struggle with neurodiversity. I believe that's part of the vulnerability. I have autism, and I believe that was part of my vulnerability and naivete. I think it contributed to that, plus my lack of sex education when I was younger. But at the same time, that kind of pressure in that moment, it was my life. It felt like this is my survival. What do I do to get out of here? And that means playing along to some degree. And when I get home, they take me home. I can get out of this. I just had to get home. That's all I cared about that night. And so once I got home, again, there's no cell phones, right? This is 90s time.
Right.
And the only way to really communicate with each other would be through leaving messages. So I just ghosted and disappeared. It's my magic trick.
So, man, so with these traffickers, did they it sounds almost like that they knew just the right lines to where they could potentially get away with it if they were turned in.
What would I turn them in
It
for?
exactly, like, that's crazy.
What would I tell anybody? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess, did they, ever get in trouble, or do you know is that the last time you
No.
ever heard from them or talked to them?
I disappeared completely. And because of my being gypsy, as a child, we moved a lot. We moved cities. I moved a lot. I was very good at disappearing. It's part of being a survivor of abuse. When you need to get out, hide out, you figure it out. And I was that kid, a street kid. And I think that in that moment, especially at the end of it all, I believe they wanted to let me go. I became more of a risk to them because of my little bit of rebellion and not doing what they asked. I believe when you become a problem, it's either they have to drug you and get you knocked out, which happens. That's taken stuff. They'll get you out of here, by the way, if they want you bad enough. I believe they were too old. They were much older and influential, and I wasn't deep enough. I wasn't in there long enough. It's a very long process. It's a system. And ironically, less than a year later, I found myself in with a whole nother lifestyle ring. That lifestyle is,
A parallel lifestyle?
yeah, same exact kind, but it was a different set of influential people, and I was in a different business. and they saw my other vulnerabilities. We can get you clients. We can, right? We can promote you. We can do those things. But then it turned into me doing sex work. You would make more money because of how you look. You would make more money if you did pictures and modeling and photo shoots. Now, mind you, I am 5 foot tall and I am no model. And they were offering me, lingerie and things to seduce and entice me. It is a game. You're a pawn in a game, and it's a long-winded game. I just didn't realize all those red flags until I was already way deep into it. And I tell you this again, I'm not one in a million, or I'm not rare. I am a representative of so many, and their stories are worse because they don't get out. I believe that my autism helped me with that a little bit. I say that loosely.
What do you mean by that?
It's this detachment that I have that many survivors I know that don't struggle with autism, their love and bond with their abuser is so much deeper than the
Really?
bond I felt. It's something I've explored with all of my therapists because I didn't get diagnosed till much later in life. I was in my mid-40s and struggling with addiction and complex PTSD and all the things. And when we explored that component in me, it was, wow, you really didn't see that kind of naivete, but also my instant detachment is very rare. Most survivors that you talk to, they will tell you that it is very difficult to get out of there. And they do go home and say, I'm never doing this again. And then there's no money, not enough money to pay your bills. And you aren't supporting many have kids. They're not supporting their children. And sex work, sex clubs, swinging lifestyle that provides you money and gifts and travel in exchange for sex. It's a whole nother gamut of stuff that people don't realize are happening in the background. And that's what our young people are getting wrapped up into. It's a
Yeah.
big deal, especially
Yeah.
with the internet. I didn't
I
have the internet.
I was gonna ask, so, like, I know this is said from time to time, but, like, how true is it that, a lot of the porn that people watch now, or some of the online cam things or OnlyFans or whatever, how much of those models are actually being trafficked? And maybe they realize it and maybe they don't, but how many of them are actually, in fact, being trafficked? Is that a large number?
There is, I don't have the statistics ready specifically, and I try not to put down any certain platforms
Sure.
because I don't understand everybody's positioning. What I will tell you is what we find, because I do research on human trafficking and modern slavery and academics for the University of Central Florida, and I'm an author with them as well, not just a private published author. And what we have found is that kind of platform gives traffickers the way to do it without getting in trouble.
Right, so they can
There's
window shop, basically.
and the traffickers are the ones that have them on OnlyFans. They're not the buyers. Traffickers are not the buyers. The two women that trafficked me when I was 22 and 23, they weren't the buyers. They're the ones that got me there. That's the system. And in the system, I was a bottom. I was a business developer for the lifestyle, practically. It was me telling people how great this is and how everybody loves each other. And it was a whole new free love feeling. Meanwhile, I was being pushed further and further to do things that I would never have done without alcohol and drugs, A. And B, I would never have done as a person.
Right.
And things that they got me in positions where I'm embarrassed. And the only way to rationalize that is by being excited, pushing
Yeah.
away the embarrassment and going, I love this. So that's what's happening a lot on the pornography and internet sites and all the different sites that promote certain sex modalities or any other fetish modalities. And I think it's up to every individual to manage that. But
Yeah.
as a survivor of human trafficking and knowing survivors that are survivors from those platforms. It is the same kind of process, brainwashing, what we could do with you. We could make so much money with you. You're a beautiful girl. Well, I'm not good at business. They usually look for people who aren't really great at running their own businesses. It's no different than being a pimp. It's no different. So many of those girls, the controller, they are the ones that are pushing the traffic into the OnlyFans. They're the ones that are, or any other of the other sites, escort sites and things like that. A lot of the traffickers are the ones pushing the marketing and how those girls are getting clients. That's the same form of pimping. And they don't reap all the benefits. The abusers, the traffickers make most of the money.
Yeah, so they're grooming on a whole nother level. Like this is like a very subtle and almost like I'm helping you out kind of grooming. Like I'm
It
a man, like
feels
I'm
like you're
manage you.
obligated.
Okay,
Yeah. It becomes they've given you a loan in life. I'm teaching you how to have a better life, how to have the nicer cars and the shoes. And you don't, a lot of these girls and men and women are in this. And boys and girls. It's not exclusive to anyone. They are making this person dependent on them from the beginning. What do you want? A job, a car, shoes, and you rarely get the promises, but there's always promises. And it's very difficult to walk away from those promises when you don't have food. I can't
right.
tell you how many lettuce sandwiches I've eaten in my life from lack of money. It's just part, even today as a 51-year-old woman, when I'm feeling strained by money, my resort is I'll just eat lettuce and mayonnaise sandwiches until I can afford it. And that is what they look for. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so when people hear Survivor, I know that for the most part, they're kind of like we were talking about earlier with like movies like Taken. They're thinking of surviving the actual event. That they lived through it. Or it ended or whatever. But I think that it's probably goes without saying that that is just the beginning of the survival, right? So, like, what did survival demand from you after the immediate danger or the immediate trauma was over?
Unfortunately, I just fawned. I kind of fell away from my life. I ran. My survival was moving cities, starting my life over, the things like that. I did get married. I had children. I got married. I've been married 23 years. I'm still married. I didn't
Congratulations. That's
just
awesome.
get married, but I've been married 23 years. I have 2 adult children. I survived by just living my life, but inside I was imploding. I didn't deal with it. I believe that I started really understanding what surviving meant once I quit drinking and I dug into my recovery. I didn't use that as an escape and I looked it in the face. I took responsibility for what was mine. And I went to therapists, had different intervention, different programs. And when something didn't work and I was still feeling that, I call it crawling out of my skin. When I feel that feeling, I use therapies, meditation. I had a couple interventions, medical interventions over my life, over the last 4 years. I kept digging into what would work next, and I never stopped. What would keep me from drinking every day? I won't
Yeah.
stop. But healing can become an addiction too.
Yeah.
Survival can become an addiction.
I was just about to ask, you described drinking beauty as more than substance use, right? And it's also some kind of it's an intoxication of, the beauty, acceptance, right? Different things like that. So when did being chosen start to feel like proof that you were safe or worthy in that whole, I guess, drinking beauty?
Well, drinking beauty isn't really about me. I want to say that
Okay.
at first. Drinking beauty isn't me. Drinking beauty in the Seven Narcissists was it just popped in my head about 5 years ago when I was thinking about writing my
Great title.
memoirs. Thank you. It was something that I almost didn't publish because, or didn't publish it as that title work. I had other beta readers and people involved that said, man, it's really harsh. You're going to struggle with people biting back because of the words I'm using. So my book is designed that every word is actually a chapter of the book, and it is my life through each of those lenses. So drinking is my life through the lens of my drinking, how I was introduced to it, how it captivated me, how I got through my addiction, and where I am now. Then chapter 2 is beauty. And beauty is actually how beauty is taken from us, which is usually through abuse or some sort of accident, tragedy, trauma. And so beauty is actually about abuse, not physical beauty. And so every chapter after that is the name of the book. Chapter 3 is and, chapter 4 is the. And I deal with all different topics that have to do with healing, grieving. My parents, both of my parents are not alive. So
Oh,
you find out how that is.
yeah.
One chapter is strictly my life through the lens of children, animals, and parenting. And every chapter is laced with a soundtrack. So you read a passage and there's a song listed there for you to go look
I
up
love
and
that,
listen
yeah.
to. And it helps break up the trauma as well. But it also, these songs are songs that I've listened to throughout all the decades of my life. And they help me articulate my emotions, especially when I was younger. I used music that way.
Now can the song, because I know songs, it's like a smell, just you can just create a memory. So are those ever triggering for you, some of those songs?
All of them are
And
memory
that's kind of the
spawners
point,
for me.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was excavating the memories, and I was still drinking when I started writing this book. I was drinking for about a year of writing, and it started out as a hate novel against all of the alcoholics and abusers and narcissists, as we label them, in my life. It was a pure rage novel against everyone that hurt me while I was drinking. The concept is that this music is what either healed me, helped me find words. It's an event, it's a memory. So some of those actually are tied to abuse. One of the songs, I did a lip sync at a talent show in my seventh grade year of middle school after I was raped. And
Wow.
I did a lip sync of a song called Live to Tell by Madonna. It's a way old song. And it was what I felt inside at 12 years old, that I have this tale to tell. And how does a 12-year-old come up with that kind of language of knowing that you have to hold on to certain secrets? And you can't tell anyone right now, but one day you might be able to. And so that's what some of that music does. And it also reminds me who I am.
Yeah.
Some of it reminds me of the survival. A lot of the songs have the word survivor or talk about survival in them. So I want the audience that reads my book or listens to my book eventually, I want them to look at this as a journey for themselves. It's interactive. You won't like all the songs. You're not going to like all my choices, but you're not supposed to.
Right.
These are lenses that I experience my life through, and you'll feel my moments of rage and my moments of overcoming and my moments of awakening and becoming. So that's what I wanted Drinking Beauty to do.
Okay. So you kind of mentioned, you mentioned your family, your husband, kids, and then obviously your memoir and all that. But when surviving becomes, your full-time job, after that is over, how do you create a new identity? I mean, like what, when you're separating your actual self from that person of trauma that you used to be.
I wasn't really able to do that. I speak about it often now, and I say my biggest struggle with the amount of trauma that I experienced, my biggest struggle was going out into the regular world and trying to sell. I use the pen as a metaphor, going out into the world and trying to sell a pen, but every night going to bed crying because I know that there are other little children going through what I went through as a child and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep anymore. For me, the mission became my way of living. Doing the memoir was the greatest thing I ever did for myself, and that's part of my book. I say no matter what you've been through, you didn't have to be trafficked. You don't have to have what we think of more extreme. Whatever you've been through, it doesn't have to go on a bookshelf. Write your
Hmm.
own memoir. Dig into your own truths and your own memories and excavate them however you need to. Music's a great way. Pop culture, movies, those elements help. But digging into me was what allowed me to live finally. And survivors that have extreme trauma, complex PTSD, that struggle with mental health issues, there should be a place for all of us in the world. And that means we get to talk about it.
Right. Right.
What if I work here and talk about that also I survived? If we can find a way that those can be congruent in some way, we would have a safer place.
When people think of healing, a lot of times they think of it as a very black and white, like before and after kind of story. So on the days where things still kind of feel messy, what is it that keeps you moving forward instead of wanting to, and I know it's years later, but wanting to fall back into the cycle, you know?
And there were times throughout my adulthood that I thought about when money was tough. Well, maybe we could just make videos, or it was very popular when all the
Sure.
couples porn stuff and couples together, it became almost like a therapeutic example of what couples can do. But where it goes and makes money becomes more of a form of pornography for people and less therapeutic when it's not supervised. And multiple times, I thought about selling prescription drugs as an adult when money was tough.
Yeah.
So I don't think those things ever go away. What I do now is I wake up every day with intention. I know when first thing, thank you, I'm grateful, I'm here. I am more than a survivor. I'm meant to be here. So that grateful component is part of it. But then setting intention every day. I'm not drinking. Number one, every day I don't drink, it's a good day,
Yeah.
right? And I'm almost 4 years into that, 4 years in October
That's
of
awesome.
that commitment. And I fell off 6 times. So I'm not an instant cold turkey person. And to be able to be on the other side of that and go, just talking about it helps.
Right.
Just writing it down will help. But then living who you really are, living who you really want to be in this life is just as important, that authenticity piece. And so I had to let a lot of things leave my life. And I do that every day. I get enticed by toxic environments every single day, especially drinking, because it's more accepted than almost anything in our society.
Right.
And it's in our faces constantly. And then I make intentions that I know who I am. That isn't who I am. I'm not really a lifestyle person. I didn't enjoy it, but I can be convinced I do. And when I really look at myself, I know who I am now. If you know who you are, you set your intentions. It doesn't matter what lifestyle you live,
Mhm.
and commit to that.
I
Tremendous amount of discipline.
I would think that your platform probably also holds a certain amount of accountability too that helps out with that too. That helps to not fall back because, hey, I have a purpose. I'm helping people now. I'm sure that comes down to thinking about some of the people that are looking up to you as well.
It is. It is a form of accountability. I actually write it in there. I finally had to tell the truth. And of course, people who are in my family, people read it before I released it to the public. But it's more about showing people that you can tell the truth and survive that. We're afraid to tell the truth. That's why we're always in survival mode. We fear what people will think of me
Yep.
or think of us. I fear that. I become unemployable essentially when everybody reads everything that's in my book. I knew that. That's why it took me 5 years to decide. I pulled it back 3 times and said, I'm not going to do it because this is how everybody will view me the rest of my life. I had to choose to be basically a personality now. That's why I'm doing the podcasts and doing media and getting into bookstores and the outreach because it's bigger than me. I'm just another set of stories. If I can pretty that up with a title that's intriguing or somewhat provocative and give people real raw stories of how it happens, we could change one little kid's life if that parent says one thing to their child that prevents it from happening to them. If I have
Yeah.
one human, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
One
And you must have a very supportive family also, because I'm sure that you wanted to at least find out from them how they felt about you putting something like this out there for the world to see, right?
Mhm. It's very
Yeah.
delicate. It starts my children were the most I have 2 children, a boy and a girl. The most delicate part of this for me, my husband knew about this stuff many, many years ago, and that was part of who we were friends before we got married, so none of this came out to him later that I had to
Right,
approve,
right.
but we had to have the conversation of, "This affects our lives in the following ways. How does this affect my children's life?" And ironically, my daughter, who's a performer, was asked to be on American Idol this season.
Wow.
And yeah, and she made the top 20 finalists onto
Wow.
television and the whole thing. And we toured with her for almost 6 months to get her through all of the auditions and get her to Hollywood. And my biggest fear, I was going to release my book before that. As soon as we heard about American Idol, I was like, okay, well, I'm getting a normal job and I'm not releasing this book. That's what we're doing. Fast forward, she leaves American Idol, and because I was touring with her, I was only writing my book.
Yeah.
And when she was done, we had a family meeting with my son and all of us and made sure that everybody understood the impact, but understood what my purpose was. It isn't about me. I don't really need people to cry for me. I want them to go home and talk to their grandkids and their nieces and nephews and each other and open doors for deep conversations.
Right.
And both of my children are intellectual and wonderful that they understood this was more than what we could do just being a normal family in the world. In some way we're chosen.
Misty, can you give us the name once again of the memoir and like where people can find it?
Absolutely. It's called Drinking Beauty and the Seven Narcissists, a musical journey. And there are 2 platforms that you can get it on right now. Amazon. I have it in paperback, hard copy, as well as Kindle. And you can also get it directly from my website at drinkingbeautyjourney.com. And
Okay.
so it's just drinkingbeautyjourney.com, and I have paperback, EPUB, and PDF there. So no matter how you'd like to do it, you can do that now. I'm going to be in bookstores coming soon and also recording audiobook. That'll be the next phase. But we had to start doing it this way, start talking to you guys.
This has been
Yeah.
great. Yes. And, so I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes if to just to kind of leave everybody with something for us parents that, again, have daughters, or, I mean, like you said, it's not just girls, boys, whatever, but for us parents, and then also for someone that maybe is in the lifestyle. What is one thing that you would want to say to them that you wish that someone would have said to you or to your parents?
It's okay to say no. It's okay to say no if you don't want to do something the first time. I believe that it's those little incidental things in the beginning of relationships with abusers that we don't pay attention to, the little mini red flags where they press boundaries. And if children are taught that their boundaries are important, very young, it's okay to say no. You don't have to sit on their lap because they're your uncle. You don't have to look at a picture just because I think it's important or read something. And if we can shape young people to have a voice, I'm not talking about rebellion,
Right.
a real voice, a discussion of what are you experiencing in the world? What are you hearing about sex? You know it's okay to say no. You know it's okay. And get them out of people pleasing. All of us, that was one of my symptoms, people pleasing.
Yeah. I think a lot of people suffer from that too, because everybody wants to be liked, and so that looks different for or loved, yeah, loved, and so that looks different for a lot of people. Thank you so much, Misty. This has been really insightful, and I hope that you do great with your memoir. I'm sure that you will, and
Thank you.
we'll make sure to get the word out as best that we can, and maybe we can circle back around sometime and do something else. Maybe after when you're ready to publish your second memoir.
Yeah, well, I have 9 more books coming from this one. Each chapter has its own book. I have too many stories and too much music. Yeah.
And it's I love the music part too. I'm a big music guy, so, I love the fact that you resonate so much with different songs, and that not only does it can it trigger you, but that's what you want it to do because you're trying to face those things. So I just love that. That's great.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, and thank your audience for listening. I appreciate all of you.